The 13th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is Kshetra Kshetra Rajna Vibhaga Yoga. The word Kshetra means the field and Kshetrajna means the knower of the field. We can think of our material body as the field and our immortal soul as the knower of the field. In this chapter, Krishna discriminates between the physical body and the immortal soul. He explains that physical body is temporary and perishable, whereas the soul is permanent and eternal. The physical body can be destroyed, but the soul can never be destroyed. The chapter then describes God, who is the supreme soul. All the individual souls have originated from the supreme soul. One who clearly understands the difference between the body, the soul, and the supreme soul attains the realization of Brahman. Verse 1, Arjuna said, I wish to learn about nature and the spirit, the field and the knower of the field, the knowledge and that which ought to be known, O Kesava. Verse 2, the blessed Lord said, O Arjuna, this body is called the field. He who knows it is called the knower of the field by those who know them. Verse 3, do thou also know me as the knower of the field? In all fields, O Arjuna, knowledge of both the field and the knower of the field is considered by me to be the knowledge. Verse 4, hear from me in brief what the field is, of what nature it is, what its modifications are, whence it is, who he is, and what his power are. Verse 5, sages have sung in many ways with various distinctive chants and also with suggestive words indicative of the absolute, full of reasoning and decisive. Verse 6, the great elements, egoism, intellect, and also the unmanifested nature, the 10 senses and the mind and the 5 objects of the senses. Verse 7, desire, hatred, pleasure, pain, the aggregate body, intelligence, and fortitude, the field has thus been briefly described with its modifications. Verse 8, humility, unpretentious, non-injury, forgiveness, uprightness, service to the teacher, purity, steadfastness, and self-control. Verse 9, indifference to the objects of the senses and also absence of egoism, perceiving the evil in birth, death, old age, sickness, and pain. Verse 10, non-attachment, non-identifications of the self with son, wife, home, and the rest in constant even-mindedness in the face of the attainment of both desirable and undesirable. Verse 11, unswerving devotions to me through the yoga of non-separations, resorting to solitary places and a distaste for the company of people. Verse 12, constancy in self-knowledge, the perception of the end of true knowledge. This is declared to be knowledge, and what is opposed to it is ignorance. Verse 13, I will declare that which is to be known, knowing which one attains immortality, the beginningless supreme Brahman, which is neither being nor non-being. Verse 14, with hands and feet everywhere, with eyes, heads and mouths everywhere, with ears everywhere, he exists in the worlds, enveloping all, shining by the functions of all the senses, yet without being attached to them, unattached yet supporting all, devoid of qualities yet the experience of them. This is verse 15. Verse 16, it is within and without all beings, both the unmoving and the moving. It is subtle and unknowable, and it is near and far away. Verse 17, undivided, yet it exists as if divided in beings. It is to be known as the supporter of beings. It devours, it generates, Verse 18. The lights of all lights is said to be beyond darkness, knowledge, the knowable, and the goal of knowledge seated in the hearts of all. Verse 19. Thus the feel as well as knowledge and the knowable have been briefly stated. My devotee knowing this enters into my being. Verse 20. Know that nature and the spirit are both beginningless, and known also that all modifications and qualities are born from nature. Verse 21. In the production of the effect and the cause, nature is said to be the cause. In the experience of pleasure and pain, the soul is said to be the one responsible. Verse 22. The soul seated in nature experiences the qualities born of nature. Attachment to the qualities is the cause of its birth in good and evil homes. Verse 23. The Supreme Soul in this body is called the Observer, the Permitter, the Sustainer, the Enjoyer, the Great Lord, and the Supreme Self. Verse 24. He who thus knows the Spirit and matter together with their qualities, in whatever condition he may be, he is not reborn. Verse 25. Some behold the self within themselves through meditations, others through the yoga of knowledge, and still others through the yoga of action. Verse 26. Others too who do not know thus worship, having heard of it from others. They too cross beyond death, regarding what they have heard as the supreme refuge. Verse 27. Wherever a being is born, whether unmoving or moving, know thou, O best of the Bharatas, that it is from the union of the field and its knower. Verse 28. He who sees the Supreme Lord existing truly in all beings, the imperishable within the perishable, sees indeed. Verse 29. For he who truly sees the same Lord dwelling everywhere does not destroy the self by the self, rather he attains the highest goals. Verse 30. He sees who sees that all actions are performed solely by nature and that the self is without action. Verse 31. When a person sees all beings as resting in the One and emanating from the One alone, they then become Brahman. Verse 32. Being without beginning, devoid of any qualities, the Supreme Self, imperishable, though dwelling in the body, O Arjuna, neither acts nor is tainted. Verse 33. As the all-pervading, either is not tainted due to its subtlety, so the self-seated everywhere in the body is not tainted either. Verse 34. Just as the one sun illuminates the entire world, so too does the Lord of the field, Supreme Self, illuminate the entire field, O Arjuna. Verse 35. They who by the eye of knowledge perceive the distinction between the field and its knower, as well as the liberation from the nature of being, go to the Supreme. Jai Shri Krishna.